PSA. Whenever you have a good encounter with someone at the cash register, a good encounter with an employee at a store in general, you think that they were being kind, uplifting, positive, optimistic, might have changed your life, the receipt that they give you probably has their name on it. I say this because this, when I was in 8th grade, so, 8th grade me, I went to Blockbuster and I got Star Wars Force Unleashed, and I got it on the Wii, right? And I did not know I was going to get this. And the kind person at Blockbuster gave me, 11,134 out of 20,000. And as an 8th grade kid, I was just like, whoa, this is incredible. As a 30-year-old adult, I'm like, wow, that really happened. This is awesome, And, it's cool that LucasArts partnered with Blockbuster. This was at the time where Netflix and Redbox were starting to really get some momentum, but Blockbuster was still doing pretty well, and so this kind of is its own artifact of, a time kind of at the really at the apex, the end apex of Blockbuster. Obviously, their prime is like the 90s, early 2000s, but this is the late 2000s, right? I started 8th grade in 2008, so 2008, 2009, towards the end of the 2000s, they were still at an apex, but this is when it starts to go a bit down. And so I really, every now and then when I see this, I just remember not just how fun of a game Force Unleashed was. It really is like a blend of God of War and Star Wars Jedi Outcast. But it reminds me of a time where we still were in a lot more, physical media, which, in terms of the environment, it's great that we have gone more green. Though it's kind of its own debate of, physical media is good for owning a product, but then of course digital media saves on production costs. And as long as companies let me own that I, have something of the game, like I like what Steam does, right? So that kind of tail end era of the 2000s, it's a really good time. And I wish I mean, as an 8th grader, you don't often even use receipts at all. They'll hand it to you at times, and you often either throw it away, recycle. You don't really do the surveys. This isn't like, nowadays with McDonald's, the buy one, get one free sandwich survey, which is a really good deal, especially in our current economy in the United States. But, I do wish that I could keep that person's name, because I do remember the cashier was super kind, and I showed up to buy Force Unleashed on Wii, and they're like, here you go. And that was a big moment, for an 8th grade kid as a Star Wars fan, and it was just cool. I could tell the guy was good at his job, and I think it's things like that they go a long way. I think we live in a world with so much negativity all the time. We live in a world where a lot of feedback is negative, because oftentimes when things go well, there's a lot of people that, go, of course it goes well, as it should be, right? But to me, it's like, I really appreciate that not only did things go well at Blockbuster, but the guy just kindly handed me this awesome frame, this awesome picture. And I hope they're doing well. I do, there is a PSA towards, if you had a good experience at a store or just with a business in general, go out of your way to let that business know that they did a good job. It really goes a far way. And, I think that's the part of integrity, too, is some people want to say, oh, yeah, guess what I did? I did all these good deeds. I told these companies how good these people are. Don't do it for that. Do it because it makes a difference. And I talked about the economy in the United States. Honestly, I think a good review goes even farther right now. So yeah, if you really do have a good experience, I'm talking from a Starbucks coffee that you'd enjoy to a Dunkin' Donuts coffee you enjoy, and you notice that the workers are always kind. Make a remark of that. I think that does go a long way. In competitive Pokemon, it's, one thing about, speaking of people being vocalized in negativity, I've noticed that some competitors often complain about being limited. What that means is you know, at times people are not happy that a Pokemon can only learn 4 moves. In competitive Smogon, they call it 4 move slot syndrome. I don't believe in that term. The term is saying, like, you look at a Pokemon like Nidoking, right? And Nidoking is known to be this offensive powerhouse, multi-elemental powerhouse, right? He can use Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Flamethrower, Earth Power, Sludge Wave, Super Power, right? So those are 6 high damaging moves. And Pokemon can only learn 4 moves. So they say 4 move slot syndrome because Nidoking can only use 4 of the 6 moves I said, and there's plenty other moves that he can use. To me, it's more about, oh, Nidoking gets 4 moves, so what is the current landscape that I should choose? You know, what does the current landscape tell me on what I should choose right now? In current Pokemon OU, unfortunately, Nidoking isn't, you know, in the current format, but thankfully Smogon does a National Dex format, which is always my go-to format. And, you know, in National Dex, which is basically what Game Freak should have always done every generation, we are looking at trends, right? So the Pokemon Goldango is really big right now. The Pokemon Iron Valiant is really big right now. So to me, I'm already like, okay, Goldango and Iron Valiant, right. Ghost Steel type, and then the other one is a Fairy Fighting type. To me, it's like, oh, well, sounds like Earth Power and Sludge Wave are really good for 2 of my moves. Oh, but there's context that Goldango could be using an item that, you know, lets him float in the air balloon. Okay, right, and he's immune to Sludge Wave. Okay, so the 3rd move could be Flamethrower to hit him. And I'm looking at some other trends too, though. I'm like, okay, well, you know, Therian Landorus is played a lot. There's Gliscor. They're both ground flying types. They have a ×4 weakness to ice. What if my 3rd move is Ice Beam? So even if Goldango switches in, the Ice Beam will get rid of the air balloon, right? Oh, wow, okay, 3 moves. Sounds good already. And then the 4th move, let's try Substitute for now, and then as I play, I can mix and match. That's, to me, is like, that's why I don't believe in 4 move slot syndrome, because I think it's a mindset of current adaptation and also trying things out. The thing is about Pokemon, though, is there's always a 5th move, unless you're the last Pokemon. But if you have more than 1 Pokemon, there's always a 5th option, and that's switching. Switching, I think, not only is switching so good that moves that hurt Pokemon that switch in, like Stealth Rock and Spikes, are really strong, Toxic Spikes. Switching is not talked about enough as the 5th move for Pokemon. And I actually think that predicting switching is one of the biggest, you know, leaps for a lot of competitive players, from going from beginner to mid to high to top in terms of like level of experience, because it opens a new gateway for predictive play. When you're switching, you know, you are circumventing certain matchups. I just brought up the Nidoking versus Goldango scenario. Goldango shows up, Ghost Steel type, Nidoking, you know, is packing Earth Power, their air balloons shut down, so they might be switching into a Pokemon that is immune to Earth Power. Easily could have like a Therian Tornadus there. But the context is so important, because they switched to Tornadus, but if they saw that I used Ice Beam, they might not. They don't want me to predict that they're going to switch there. So, rather than that, they see Ice Beam, they're going to switch into Blissey. Blissey has a lot of special defense, while Blissey isn't resisting ice or ground or poison. Blissey is known to be a really tanky Pokemon. This actually full circles back to Superpower. A lot of moves by Nidoking are special attacking moves, so they dial into his special attack currently. But there are times where people they tap into Nidoking's pretty high physical attack, and they'll run a move like Superpower, which can really dent Pokemon like Blissey, Pokemon like, Chansey that, have really below average physical defense. And that's a fun tech. That's a fun way to predict switches and punish them. Or you kind of try to Trojan horse the move and try to condition them into a false sense of security where they might feel like they're safe with Blissey or Chansey out. There's a lot of these different things that go on with switching as the 5th move. And it's really fun to watch just competitive Pokemon with the mindset that really, it's like a fighting game between two trainers, and their 6 Pokemon are like the different movesets they tap into. I love Gen in Street Fighter, how he can switch between 2 different completely different styles of Kung Fu, and Pokemon seems like a similar way where you're switching between 6 different fighting styles. And switching is a move. So now I'm looking at the context that our health bar is our 6 Pokemon, and a knockout is a percentage of that health bar, right? Which is fun because the HP on the Pokemon are like even more individualized health bars. But at the end of the day, you look at the whole big picture of it, and, you know, moving is positioning. It's like chess, being able to reposition your pieces around and prepare, you know, counter strikes. A lot of fun. And I think the prospect of switching in Pokemon really goes into fighting games, because I think at times we get so caught up in analyzing competitive games where it's like, oh, you know, in Project Plus, you know, Mario's Fireball is really good, and against Mr. Game & Watch, you know, you might be able to Fireball, but you gotta watch out for his Oil Panic to maybe absorb the Fireball and fire them back, right? So there's already the context of these moves, right? And as a Mr. Game & Watch player, they might be going, yeah, that's true, but they might be looking for me to throw out a Fireball. So as they do that, and they show that they're going to ambush me right when I get out my Oil Panic bucket, maybe I should just crouch in place. And so one big fighting game mix-up that I think a lot of people don't expect right now is standing, walking slowly, and or crouching in place. Now, in games like Super Smash Bros. Melee, there's obviously a thing called crouch canceling, and in P+, where it circumvents a lot of hit stun at early percent. In a nutshell, when you crouch, you are halting a lot of potential momentum from the opponent of potentially winning a combo. But regardless, in Melee, P+, even with that in mind, just standing still or walking slowly is such a bold mix-up right now that I've gotten people quitting mid-game all the time. It's hilarious. It's funny to me that, you know, people get so caught up on, if they do this, I'll do that. If they do this, I'll do that. Okay, well, here's another option I have. Not doing much, but not doing much is doing a lot. People joke about how no response is a response when you're messaging someone. And not giving a lot of action is an action, especially if the opponent is trained to try to react upon whatever you initiate. So in Pokemon, while you might get caught up about, oh, this Pokemon can only do these 4 moves, always remember your 5th move is switching that Nidoking into a Cleavor that has a lot of physical defense and has a Rocky helmet on it, and will punish the opponent if they try to do a physical move like Ice Punch on your Nidoking. There's a lot of complexity involved with Pokemon, and that complexity really opens up even more with the capability of switching. And at the end of the day, whether you're competing or going about in life, sometimes not doing a lot is a big action to do. Sometimes not giving people a lot out of your self-respect and forming a healthy boundary is one of the most productive things you can do and build upon each day. I love Mondays.